So, welcome to chapter 16 and 17 of Genesis. We took a little break last week, so we're grouping them together today, not only because of the break, but because they flow together. I think they're not too lengthy, and I believe we can do it. We can cover this with a fair amount, of time, not going over what we've already done in the past. So, having said that, let's go ahead and begin reading the chapters. We're gonna start with 16. So this is how we're gonna do it. We're going to, hold on, let me switch this. We're gonna start with 16, then we're gonna do the recap with the slides, obviously the connecting precepts with 16, and then we'll quickly move on to 17 and so on and so forth. So because it's two chapters, I'm gonna go ahead and read just to make it less lengthy. I think it just would make more sense. So chapter 16. Hagar and Ishmael. So now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Adon has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. Then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Adon judge between you and me." So Abram said to Sarai, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please." And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Adon found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. Well, pay attention to that location there where Hagar goes to. We're going to discuss it later. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Adon of the Most High said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand." Then the angel of the Most High said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude." And the angel of the Most
Close of lines, please.
Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Most High has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of the Adon who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees." For she said, "Have I also here seen him who sees me?" Therefore, the well was called Bir Lahai Roy. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So we see the dilemma starts on chapter 16. Interestingly, last time we covered chapter 15, it was about entering into the eternal covenant, right? And we see that part of that covenant was the promise that he would make him the father of many nations, right? Clearly, we see something shifts here, and it's not per se that he doubted, and I believe we discussed this last week as well. It's not that perhaps he doubted the promise. I don't believe he did. More so, he thought maybe I have to do something about it, right? So he thought more with a fleshly mind, like, okay, the promise is this, but maybe it is that is not with Sarai. Maybe Sarai is right. Let me do something about it for the promise to be fulfilled. And that's what I believe takes place here. So a few things are taking place, but before we go into, let me just give a brief introduction to both chapters through the slides. Um, And then we can continue. So Genesis 16:17, we're gonna see here, and I titled it Flesh versus Promise, Covenant, and the God who sees, the Elohim who sees, right? And why did I title it this? Because that's exactly what happens. Flesh versus a promise covenant. We know that the promise covenant that was given to Abram back in chapter 15 was of the spirit, was of faith, right? It wasn't of the flesh. Here we see a move on Abram's part, acted upon flesh, right? Not by faith, but basically by sight. And so Genesis, these two chapters that I know we just read one, but 17 also reveals the tension between human striving and divine promise. And we're not only going to see this with Abram's story, we see this throughout and even in our own lives. We're always striving to help the Most High, right? We're always trying to fill in the little gaps. Like, okay, so he promised me this, but maybe I'm gonna use the young girls, the young ladies here. Like he promised me a man and boy, a boo-thang, right? I don't know. I don't see him coming, so let me help him a little, right? Let me join a dating app or whatever. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that that's bad either, but sometimes we just get a little bit, you know, antsy and we take things into our own hands. And that's what I'm trying to explain here, that exactly what happens. So we see that Abram and Sarai attempt to fulfill the word of the Most High through their own understanding, right? While the Most High remains faithful to establish his covenant in his perfect timing. And that is something that it takes time for all of us to understand, that it is not in our timing, it is in his timing. And sometimes we're looking at the clock and
Right.
we're looking and we're thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm getting older, all right? The clock is ticking. When is my boo thing coming, right? Or whatever. I'm throwing my single ladies here under the bus, but I'm just saying in general. I'm not saying they're desperate, by the way. I'm not saying they're desperate. I'm just saying that that's something that does happen, right? And so in these chapters, we see something very similar. We see, so this happens. The birth of Ishmael was the flesh, human effort, okay? The promise of Isaac, like I said before, was spirit, divine fulfillment. The revelation of El Shaddai, which is the Elohim Almighty, and the Most High revealed as the God who sees. I love that, by the way. I know I was talking about it before we started the recording. I was telling my sisters that I identify with that so much that I put it as my little icon there for my Zoom. So these chapters show that the promises of the Most High are not fulfilled through control. He meets people even in the wilderness, in wilderness places, right? His covenant is intentional, marked, and everlasting. So with that
Right.
introduction, I can't even speak right now. Let's look at some connecting precepts that I put together here for chapter 16. So we have if you are joining us live and you joined us after the recording started or after we started, period, we just read chapter 16 and we're going to group it together with 17, but I'm going to take it by part, first focusing on 16, okay? So, verse 1, where it says, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So, connecting with that is just a lot of Genesis precepts connections. Bear with me. So we have Genesis 11:30, but Sarai was barren and she had no child. Genesis 15:2-3, but Abram said, Adon, what will you give me, seeing I go childless? And the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Then Abram said, look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. And that was from chapter 15 that we did last time. But let me just reiterate that even after he said that, the Most High still promised that it would be through his own seed. So he believed on that promise, right? He knew it wasn't going to be through another heir, right? It wasn't going to be through no family member. It was through his own seed. What he failed to understand, it was through Sarai. It wasn't supposed to be through her maidservant, right? Genesis 12:16, he treated Abraham well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. And why do I read this one? This is the whole deal with, I don't know if you guys remember, but when he said that Sarai was his sister, right? And
Yeah.
on account of Sarai, the Most High plagued, what was his name? Oh
Um,
my goodness, my goodness. Wait, I have it in the tip of my tongue. If somebody could put it in the chat. I don't know why I have Kedolamir, but it's not him. It's the king, the that he appears twice with his name appears twice with Abraham and later with Isaac as well. Well, him. It'll come to me. Um, it was when he took Sarai as his own wife. So he was plagued on account of Sarai, right? Because she was the wife of Abraham. And so here, when he gives her back to Abraham, he basically gives not only gives him back his wife that he did not even touch, by the way, and that is proven in scriptures. He gives him back his wife and he sends him back with sheep, oxen. But here we see that he also gives him male and female servants. And I believe this is where Hagar comes from. Okay. I'm still trying to remember the name of this person, but he gives no, yeah, too many names. But yes, I know who I'm talking about. I just can't remember. But he gives them the female and the male servants, which happens to be Hagar because she's an Egyptian, right? Genesis 21:9, and Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian. See, Hagar, the Egyptian. That's just confirming that whom he had born to Abraham scoffing. Okay. Galatians 4:24, which are and this is beautiful because Paul is able to see the spiritual aspect of Sarai and of Sarah and Hagar. And he writes, which things are symbolic, for these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gives birth to bondage, which is Hagar. And again, I did a beautiful study on the book of Galatians. I say beautiful study because I loved studying in depth the book of Galatians, like literally dismantling what Paul is talking about, because a lot of people will grab Galatians and use it to say the law is done away with. And it is confusing if you don't have understanding of the Torah. If you don't have understanding of what Paul is talking about and you read Galatians for the first time, you're like, whoa, these people are crazy for following commandments, for following the food laws and all these things. But when you read in context and you understand what he's talking about, it's symbolic. So Hagar represents the law that was given while they broke the covenant, meaning after the sin of the golden calf, that they were placed in this covenant in the wilderness in yeah, when they were in the wilderness, and then they placed the Levitical system temporarily until the fulfillment of the Messiah would come and redeem them, right? So because of that, it represented bondage. I'm not gonna get too deep into it because that's a whole other study. That is the Galatian study. But I want you guys to understand from now. I might explain it a little better later. That Hagar represents bondage because she came, the fruit, the seed that came through her womb was as a result of the flesh. It's symbolic of what took place in the wilderness when they gave worship to the calf, another god, because of the fact that they did not hear from Moses and that then they did not see a physical Most High. So they made a god, the same exact thing. They wanted to help the Most High and said, there's a feast coming up. Let's worship a god. Let's make one. Let's create one. Perhaps let's look at the constellations. Which one is showing? Taurus, which is a bull. Let's create a god. That's the god we're going to worship. And that's the sin of the flesh, is the result of unbelief, which is why Paul then compares Hagar to the law given on Sinai. I don't know if you guys are following, to the covenant given in Sinai. So, verse 2. I took my time there too, so hopefully you guys, it's clear. So Sarai said to Abram, see now, the Most High has restrained me from bearing children. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children by her. And Abram heeded to the voice of Sarai. Again, the flesh. Okay, yeah, maybe that makes sense because it'll still be my seed, right? And quick observation here is to understand that in those days when you had your servant, it was literally like, I don't know how to better explain it, but it's almost like that was, like how people pay women now to have their children, like they pay for their womb, surrogate mom. Yeah. So it's almost like she's using Sarai. I mean, not Sarai. Sarai is using Hagar as a surrogate mom, and we're gonna see it later being done with Jacob. I mean, not Jacob. Jacob's wives, Leah and Rachel, do the same thing. They use their servants as surrogate moms, right? Sure. But if you notice in scripture, they're still considered sons of Rachel. or sons of Leah through their maidservants, right? And so they also had this understanding they belong to us. Like, I'm the master, you're my servant. And which is why for Sarai, in that moment was still her name, it was like, here, go into my maidservant. Like, use her womb, you know, type of thing. So understand also that mentality. So connecting with verse 2, we have Genesis 30 and verse 3. She said, wait. So she said, here is my maid Bilhah, go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her. And this is later on, I believe this is either Leah or Rachel. I think it's Rachel. Now, because I forgot, Bilhah was Rachel's maidservant, I think. But yes, basically it's the same thing that I'm trying to convey, the message I'm trying to explain to you guys, that for them it was like we're using their wombs, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like a lustful thing at all. So a lot of people will think, oh, but Abram was so righteous, you know? First of all, when they went into their maidservants, they became automatically their concubines, which was like, you're basically my wife. So they treated them as such, okay? With the respect, not taking away the respect of the wife. Okay, so understand, it did not make Abraham less righteous because of that, right? He wasn't thinking like, oh, she's so fine, type of thing, right? No, they were literally, okay, let's procreate the promise of the Most High. For them, it was like even like a sacred thing, right? Genesis 20:18. For the Most High had closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech. Abimelech was the name I was looking for. There you go. I knew it was going to come up. Abimelech. Okay. He had closed the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. You see, that's, yes, yes. So Abimelech, yes, yes. That's exactly what I was trying to talk about. Okay. So Genesis, and actually, this is where the Most High corrects me. I am full of mistakes. So Abimelech is later on, who gave Hagar to Abraham. It wasn't Abimelech, it was the Pharaoh of Egypt. Yes, because Abimelech was not an Egyptian. I don't think he was. He was from another nation. So this is, thank you, Abba, because I would have like confused everyone. But anyhow, Abimelech is still the name, not the one I meant, but yes, that's the one I thought. Genesis 33 and 9. So she said, here is my maid Bilhah. Once again, go into her. Okay, I have read 3 again. So verse 9, that was Leah. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah. Okay, no, so Bilhah is Rachel's. Zilpah is Leah's. And then Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. So both Leah and Rachel gave their maidservants as wives to Jacob so that they can continue expanding the seed. All right, let's continue. So understand this. This is why this is not unrighteous. The 12 tribes of Israel came through those 4 wombs. Okay, they all became his wives in one way or another. But it wasn't an unrighteous act. If not, the Most High wouldn't have said, my covenant continues with Israel. He approved it. You know, so for people to say, oh, in those days, da da da, no, guys, that we have a corrupt westernized mentality or worldwide mentality nowadays where people think of these things with lust. And I don't believe, not saying that lust does not exist in those days, it surely did. But when it came to Abraham and even Jacob, I don't believe these things were done lustfully. You know, that we see later on things done lustfully, like David, for example, yes. But once again, I just want to like clean up his name, you know? I don't think that was the intent at all. Verse 3, where it says, then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. And I think it's very interesting, by the way, that they were already dwelling in the land of Canaan when this took place, because we're going to see later that Hagar actually goes into the wilderness. We see it right here, right? So connecting with verse 3, Genesis 12, 4 and 5. So Abram departed as the Adon had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. That's just confirming that they had been in Canaan, the promised land that the Most High told them to go to. Verse 4, where it says, so he went into Hagar and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. So what happens here is that as soon as she saw that she was able to give Abram something that Sarai wasn't able to give Abram, she thought to be better than Sarai. And that's the problem. She was still a maid servant. Literally, this woman was doing Sarai a favor by lending her her womb because she's there to serve her master, okay? Her role here is to do whatever Sarai asks for, not to think that she's now better than her because, oh, I gave him a son, you know? And so we see in scriptures similar stories in 1 Samuel 1, 6, and 7. When Hannah was crying out to the Most High, who knows here the story of Hannah, right? And look what it says. And her rival also provoked her severely to make her miserable because the Adon had closed her womb. So it was year by year when she went up to the house of the Most High that she provoked her. Therefore, she wept and did not eat. And if you continue reading, you're going to see that the person who provoked her was the other wife of her husband. And so, in other words, like I gave, I'm able to have children and you don't. So right there we see that's not a good thing. Proverbs 30, 21, and 23 says, for three things the earth is perturbed. Yes, for four things, for four it cannot bear up. For a servant when he reigns, a fool when he is filled with food. Verse 23, a hateful woman when she is married, and a maid servant who succeeds her mistress. So the word is very clear in calling these people fools if you think you're better than your mistress, because of X, Y, and whatever reasons, right? For whatever reasons, you're not to think you're better than the master who sobering. It's like if I right to speak in modern language, it's like if you at your job you have a boss. That's basically your mistress or your master, right? You have a boss. If you start acting like you know better than him, I mean, you might know more than your boss. I'm not saying you can't, but if you start acting like you're higher than that person, like, oh, you have no, like you don't know what you're talking about. Like you're telling your boss what to do, like that's basically to be despised. Like the earth is perturbed, like it says here, for you acting like that. You're not supposed to act like that. You're supposed to follow and the rules of the leaders. And it even says it by Paul in Romans. We are to honor, yes, those that are over us. And so that's nothing new. That's nothing new. It's been like that from the beginning. So in other words, it backs up that Sarai was right to do what she did. She wanted, like, what the heck is wrong with this lady? Like, why is she acting like she's better than me now? Abraham, do something about it, boy. Like the heck is wrong with her? And so we see in verse 5 that she goes and complains. See, baby boy, boo thing. And then she says, like, my wrong be upon you. Like, it's my bad for doing that because I did this, right? I gave my maid into your embrace. And when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Adon judged between you and me. So in other words, she's like complaining. She's like, Abraham, boo, like, help me here. Like, what the heck what the heck did I do? And so we see connecting with verse 5, Genesis 31:53. The God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father judged between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So here we see similar language being used by Jacob. Like, may the God of our father basically judge between us. So that was kind of like saying, like, let Abba decide, like let him decide what he wants to do, and I don't know, like in today's English. Exodus 5:21. And they said to them, let the Adon look on you and judge, because you have made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, and to put a sword in their hand to kill us. So again, we see the same type of language of saying, like, let him decide what he's going to do. He will judge. So verse 6. So Abram said to Sarai, indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please. And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. So in other words, Sarai punishes her maid, and her maid is very prideful and, oh, how dare you, and takes off, basically. Very like soap opera, like I can see, right? I mean, I can imagine she felt ashamed and humbled, right? So First Peter 3:7 says, husbands, likewise, dwell with them with understanding. This is talking about their wives, right? Giving honor to the wife as to the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. And this is in the New Testament said by Peter. So we see that Abraham dealt with Sarah the same way. He left it up to her, like, do what you want, do with her what you want. Like, see, he gave his wife the honor that she deserved. Like, she shouldn't be acting like this with you. And so that's what happens. Genesis 16:9, the angel of the Most High said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. And so we see that when, so, that's all right. When Hagar takes off all rebellious and like humbled, like, how dare she touch me or humble me like that? The angel, which by the way, this could be Messiah. That's why I'm saying the angel of the Most High. Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. So we see that he actually tells her, do as your mistress tells you to do. Like, stop running, girl. And we see, like we read already, that he gives her a promise. Like, you are going to bear a son to Abraham. And even though this wasn't something she had planned, he still has mercy and grace. Um, and again, he is the Elohim who sees. That's what she calls him, El Roy, right? So we have also Exodus 2:15. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. And so we see that also when Pharaoh was gonna kill Moses, Moses fled from him in very similar language on what Hagar, not that Sarai was gonna kill Hagar, but he basically fled to the wilderness as well, as so did she. So verse 7, where it says, now the angel of the Adon found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring of on the way to Shur. So I said from the beginning, pay attention to the names that are being mentioned here. Where did Hagar go? So connecting with verse 7, we have Genesis 21:17 through 18. And Haya heard the voice of the lad. This is later on when she actually goes with Ishmael, right? Then the angel of the Most High called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, that's why I believe this angel is Messiah, by the way, and said to her, what ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for the Most High has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. Genesis 22:11 and 15. But the angel of the Most High called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. So he said, here I am. Verse 15. Then the angel of the Most High called to Abraham a second time out of heaven. And we're going to see later on, he gives, in chapter 22, he gives him again the same promise. I do believe this is Messiah, guys. Genesis 31:11. Then the angel of the Most High spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, here I am. And this is when Jacob goes, has a vision of going up a ladder, like the angels coming down. And we'll talk about that. Jacob's ladder, basically. And I believe all these encounters that are being mentioned here, this angel here, like we said already from the beginning, angel is literally God, right? Is a mighty one. Angel is not just a being with wings as we've been taught, right? It's a son of the Most High. So Messiah is an angel. And as a matter of fact, Hebrews confirms it and says he was lifted higher than the rest of the angels because he was one. Genesis 20, verse 1. And Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. So we see Abraham had dwelt from through those cities. But interestingly, we see in Genesis 25:18, they dwelt from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt, as you go toward Assyria. He died in the presence of all his brethren. And why do I read this? Because Shur is in the wilderness on the way back to Egypt. Exodus 15:22 confirms it. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Remember, they're coming out of Egypt now, right? Yeah. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. So the same way, okay, why am I reading all of this? Because we read on verse 7 that Hagar is in the land of Canaan, right? Up to here, we're reading that they've been in the land of Canaan for around 10 years. She leaves her mistress because she didn't like the way she was treated. She leaves them and goes to Shur in the wilderness, right? So she's leaving Canaan to go back to Egypt when she had been rescued from Egypt through Shur to Canaan. Are you seeing the connection here? It's going backwards, okay? The Most High intervenes, speaks through his angel, I believe Messiah, and tells her, go back and submit to your mistress. Do you see the deeper revelation here with Hagar? Which is why I believe she answers, you are the Elohim who sees me. She was a nobody, but he's sending her back to submit in obedience to the land of Canaan. I don't know if you guys are seeing the bigger picture, okay? And then in all of that, he gives her a promise that Ishmael will be a great nation. Well, later on, he confirms it when he's actually like a whole grown man and they, are sent away. But anyhow, let's continue. Verse 9, where it says, the angel of the Most High said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand. We see a similar command on Titus. This is New Testament scripture, chapter 2, verse 9. Exhort bond servants to be obedient to their own masters, to be well pleasing in all things, not answering back. And this is New Testament scripture, guys, because a lot of people will use, and I point this out to say, oh, it was so mean. It was so bad in the Old Testament, the way they treated. Guys, it was so good. It was so good that the Most High had laws to protect the slaves under you. Yeah, okay. Yeah. He had laws to how to treat your servants. Okay. It's not the word servant in scripture. It's not at all the way that we've been brought up to think of servants. Because nowadays we think of servants the way they treated the African slaves, right? Yeah. It's not at all. That was punishment. That was cruel and horrible. They would rape the women. They would do all these things. No, in the days of Abraham, they treated their servants highly. As a matter of fact, he thought that one of his servants would be the heir. Yeah. So that's how well they treated their servants. But in all of this, the servants are still to submit to their masters, kind of like the wife is supposed to submit to a husband that loves her and loves her as he loves himself, right? It's the same. Yeah.
I was going to say that even like it talks about in the Old Testament too, like even on Shabbat, like they don't make their servants work either. So like that's how they care about their servants. Like they rest too. Like it even says that you shall not even make your servant.
Really good observation. Yeah. Very good observation. It's so true. So we see verse 10 where it says, then the angel of the Most High said to her, I will multiply your descendants. What angel has command to tell somebody that, if not Messiah, right? I will multiply your descendants exceedingly so that they shall not be counted for multitude. So that's a promise that he gives Hagar, right? If she would return back and submit, right? And connecting with verse 10, we have Genesis 17:20, very similar when Ishmael, right? And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him. This is the confirmation. And will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. So he also makes Ishmael a great nation. He's just the difference with Isaac and Ishmael, and we're going to talk about it a little bit now when I share the slides, but basically Ishmael is the son of the flesh. Yeah. Isaac is the son of the promise through faith, but it doesn't make Ishmael less. We see that through the promise, through Messiah, Ishmael still can become Israel. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's where I think the fulfillment comes in. Verse 12. Wait, did we see? No, 11. And the angel of the Adon said to her, behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Adon has heard your affliction. Confirming with that, we have Genesis, Actually, no, Luke 1:13 and 31. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your prayer is heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. Verse 31, and behold, you will conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and call his name Yeshua. So, two promises given by angels, words given by angels to two women. Well, two people, Zechariah and then Mary, right? So we see very similar language here as he's telling what's her face? Hagar. You shall have a child and name him. So the name comes directly from heaven, which I think it's so cool. Verse 12, where it says, he shall be a wild man, his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all of his brethren. We have connecting with that Genesis 21:20. So Elohim was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. Then we have Job 24:5. Indeed, like wild donkeys in the desert, they go out to do their work, searching for food. The wilderness yields food for them and for their children. So even in the wilderness, in other words, Abba protects them. Job 39:5 and 8. Who set the wild donkey free? Who loosed the bonds of the onager? Whose home I have made the wilderness? And the barren land his dwelling, he scorns the tumult of the city. He does not heed the shout of the driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. I know this is metaphorically speaking, but it's kind of like the same language that has been used here for the promise of Ishmael. Genesis 25:18. They dwelt from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt, as you go toward Assyria. He died in the presence of his brethren, and this is speaking of Ishmael. So we see the full circle there. Verse 13, where it says, then she called the name of the Adon who spoke to her, you are the God who sees. For he said, have I also here seen him who sees me? Genesis 31:42. Unless the Elohim of my father, the Elohim of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty handed. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. So this is just to confirm the Elohim who sees me is El Roy, the God that sees my affliction, in other words. Genesis 32:30. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen the Most High face to face, and my life is preserved. And when I say the Most High here, I'm gonna show in the slides. Remember that they group the Son and the Father as God in our canon Bibles, which is why I like to. This would be to me, for I have seen the Adon face to face. We know that in scriptures, Messiah later says that no one has seen the Father but him. No one, absolutely no one. We see later on, and we'll see more scriptures, how Moses, which I just realized I forgot to add a couple of scriptures as I speak. But anyway, Moses was able to only see the back of the Most High. He showed him his back on Mount Sinai. Like he said, basically cover your eyes, like you'll only see the back, something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but he never saw him face to face, which is why I highly believe that every encounter of the presence of the Most High that they saw face to face was Messiah himself, not the Father. So we also have, just to sum it up for this chapter, 14, where he says, therefore, the well was called the Bir Lahai Roy. Observe it is between Kadesh and Bered. Connecting with that, we have Genesis 24:62. Now Isaac came from the way of Beer Lahai Roy, for he dwelt in the south. So we see Isaac eventually going that same way. Genesis 14:7. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and attacked all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hazazon Tamar. And that was the war. That's the Melchizedek chapter, okay? But I wanted to bring it in just to the same places that are being referenced here. And then Numbers 13:26. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. So all these places are in the wilderness, the same place that later Moses. So you see how they do this to the full circle back and forth from
Yeah.
Canaan back to Egypt through the same journey in the wilderness.
Yeah.
It's the same trajectory, like back and forth through Abraham and later back, and then it's so crazy to me. Um, which is again why we are to come out of her, my people, come out of Egypt, because we go keep going back to her.
Mm.
Um, verse
Yeah.
15. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. So it's interesting to me because here it just says that Abram named him that, but I can only imagine that he got word from the Most High confirming that that was to be his name. Because remember, the angel of the Most High told Hagar that.
Yeah.
Okay. But I believe that Abram had to have known unless Ishmael just shared it and he believed her, took her word for it, you know? But he had a connection with the Most High like that. So I'm pretty sure he knew what's up. Connecting with that, we just have Galatians 4:22 to 24. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondwoman, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, and he who of the free woman through promise, which things are again symbolic. We read this part already. For these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gives birth to bondage, which is Hagar. Now let's continue. I'm going to share now my slides really quick before we read chapter 17. So again, we see human striving and the God who sees, right? We see when promise feels delayed, like I said, Sarai's barrenness, confirming it in Genesis 11 and 15, she started, not doubting the promise, but more so like, maybe we need to help him. Cultural solution, we saw that in Genesis 33. Instead of waiting on the Most High, they tried to produce a promise themselves. Okay, so let me give you a hand, which is why I put this image here. Let me give you a hand. Let me bring the promise to fulfillment, right? So Genesis 3:17, we see that humans' decisions now produce struggle. And why do I reference Genesis 3:17, which I forgot to put it in the connecting precepts? Because this is the fall of men. Okay, this is when we see men making decisions, what it led to. It led to the struggle. Now we have to work the land, right? Now women have to bear with pain and suffering and all of these things for us making decisions. So let's trust the Most High. If something we should learn from our forefathers is
Yeah.
this, and it's hard to do it, it's easier said than done, right? But it is this: trust the Most High in His timing, not ours. Let's not try to give Him a hand, because when we do that, it's not that it's perhaps a sin, but it's adding to the things that the Most High did not have in mind for us. Okay? Now you have a whole bunch of other things that you have consequences from that and have to deal with. Abraham, unfortunately, has to deal with the conflict between Sarai and Hagar. And later, it pains him to have to let go of
Yeah.
Ishmael from his surroundings, right? From living nearby him. So our actions unfortunately have consequences. Whether, once again, it's not per se that Ishmael was cursed. We see the Most High graciously gives him a blessing, and it's graceful with even Hagar. And he never condemned her and called her a slut. How dare you open the legs for your master? No, none of that. None of that is worded here. However, it's just pointing to, don't help the Most High. Don't take things into your own hands. Bottom line. Okay? So when flesh produces conflict, going on with the same topic, right? We see 16 verses 4 through 6. Good here means what seems beneficial or convenient, and not what aligns with the will of the Most High. So Hagar despises Sarai, once again as a result. We see similar story in the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel. And then we see the same language. Do what is good in your own in your eyes. Basically, do what you think we should be doing, right?
Yeah.
Pattern. Yes. Genesis 3, deciding apart from the Most High leads to disorder and broken relationships, in other words. So, wilderness theme, we see it here in verses 7 through 12. Hagar flees into the wilderness towards Shur, right? Like I said, a connection, Exodus 15:22. Israel enters wilderness of Shur. Prophetic pattern, Hagar mirrors Israel in a way, right? Fleeing affliction, wandering in the wilderness, encountering the Most High. Do you guys see it? The wilderness is not abandonment, it is often where the Most High reveals himself and forms identity. And again, taking it back, what did he tell Hagar? Go back and submit to your master. I believe it's a very prophetic imagery that he's trying to convey here, right? And again, the God who sees. Hagar calls him El Roy, the God who sees me. There's a connection in Genesis 32:30 where Jacob sees the God and lives, right? When sees God, meaning the Adon and lives. Exodus 33:20, tension, no one sees God fully. That's when I was talking about what Moses saw, and I forgot to add the actual precept when Moses sees his back, right? So what's the deep insight here? The messenger of Haya speaks as a visible manifestation. And who is his messenger if not Messiah himself, right? This points to Exodus 23:25. Messiah is the Adon that came in the representation of the Father from the beginning. I did a mistake here. I meant here from the beginning, right? So the Most High sees the afflicted, meets the overlooked, and reveals himself through the Son personally. And again, I forgot to add the scripture, the actual scripture where it says, I will send this angel, go and obey him. I will say, I will put my name in him. And this is talking about Messiah, right? Flesh versus promise. Ishmael is born. And we saw the connection there in Galatians that Hagar represents slavery, meaning flesh, and Sarah is a freedom, meaning the promise. So human effort can produce results, but not the promise of the Most High. So, yes, you can produce a lot of results, but never what he intended. And again, oh, this is chapter 17 already. Yeah.
That's something I thought of how like the Most High is the creator and he created everything and he's the one that's meant to delegate everything. Like from the beginning, like he didn't need anybody's help. And that's why he told Job, like, does the Most High need a counselor? So sometimes we have to remind ourselves like he created it all. Like he doesn't need us.
He doesn't need us to help him.
Right.
Come on, preacher, sister.
Yeah.
So let's read this quickly because I want to be able to cover it all. Okay. So I'm going to fly by the connections. I might not read them word per word because it's a lot of Genesis collections, but bear with me. Okay. So the sign of the covenant now. Remember 15, chapter 15 is where Abraham enters the covenant. Now here's the physical sign. Okay. When Abram was 99 years old, the Adon appeared to Abram and said to him, I am Almighty. Elohim, walk before me and be blameless. Woo! I love this one. All right. So he waits for the man to be 99 years old. And he reveals himself as I am Almighty, El Shaddai. That's what that means, right? And I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly. Then Abram fell on his face, and the Most High talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. Here's where the change takes place, right? Finally, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be the Adon to you and your descendants after you. Also, I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, and as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And the Most High said to Abraham, As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised. And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations. He who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. So we see, similar to what you were saying, Alina, here, even the servants. Yeah. Everybody had to be, right? And the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Then the Most High said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to the Most High, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Then the Most High said, no, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. So we see a confirmation here, right? But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at the set time next year. Then he finished talking to him, and Haya went up, and Deadan went up from Abraham. So Abraham took Ishmael his son, all who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very same day, as the Most High had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very same day, Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael. And all the men of his house, born in the house or brought with or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. Okay, so we see a lot of things here. Let me just go to the slides. I'm going to try to do it this way now. So we see chapter 17, covenant and identity. Now it's a physical sign, right? We see that, oh, I'm sorry, my eye's starting to itch. I think I'm getting allergies. We see that the Most High reveals himself as El Shaddai, the Almighty. So connections that we're going to read right now are in Exodus 6:3 and Genesis 6:9. But the command that we see, and it's important to understand, is for him to walk before him and be blameless. In other words, be righteous, right? No sin was to be found with him. So meaning live in wholeness, obedience, and alignment. And I put this graphic here because he was already in a covenant with the Most High. He had entered that covenant where Messiah himself walked between the pieces, right? So now they're in this covenant, but now he's telling Abraham, I myself walked between those pieces. Now I need a physical sign from you. And so we see, and I like this shape here. I know it's a triangle, but because it all connects. The covenant literally goes from giving, it comes from the Father through his grace, giving us identity. And then it goes to obedience to his commandments, his perfect Torah, back to the Father. So the covenant always circles in this way. You see law and you see grace, and it goes together. Oh my goodness. Give me your grace. I'm about to finish this study. So connecting precepts with verse 1, I'm going to try to read through them quickly. Verse 1, where it says, I am the Elohim Almighty, walk before me and be blameless. Genesis 12:7. Then the Adon appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there he built an altar. Genesis 18:1. Then the Adon appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre as he was sitting in the tent door of the heat of the day. Genesis 28:3. May the Adon Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be an assembly of people. So we see that connection with the Almighty every time that he is appearing to him. Genesis 35:11. Also, the Most High said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. And this is the same promise that was said to Abraham, later said to Isaac, later said to Jacob, right? We also see, I'm sorry, guys, Exodus 6, verse 3, I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, El Shaddai, right? But by my name, Haya, I was not known to them. So this is interesting. Job 42 2, I know that you can do everything and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. Second Kings 20, verse 3, remember now, O Adon, I pray how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart and have done what was good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. I don't remember why I put Second Kings there. Let me keep reading. Genesis 6 9. This is a genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with the Most High. This is just. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Second King and this part of Noah is just showing of righteous men walking with the Most High. Deuteronomy 18:13. You shall be blameless before the Adon, your Elohim. And verse 2 where it says, and I will make my covenant between me and you and multiply you exceedingly. We have connecting with that. Genesis 15:18. On the same day the Adon made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. Exodus 6 4, I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of the pilgrimage in which they were strangers. And we see that that's already with Moses, right? Galatians 3:19, what purpose then does the law serve? It was added because of transgressions till the seed should come to whom the promise was made. And it was appointed through angels by the hand of a mediator, which is Messiah himself. Genesis 12 2, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Genesis 13 6, I'm not going to read it. Genesis 15 5, same thing. Genesis 18 and 8, same exact message about the blessing, about the promise, right? And we have verse 4. As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations, confirming that in Romans chapter 4, verse 11, 12, and 16. And he received the sign of the circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had while still uncircumcised. Understand that. Abraham entered the covenant before he was circumcised. The circumcision is a outward manifestation of that covenant, basically. Is him proving his covenant, like putting on a ring on it.
Yeah.
That he might be the father of those who believe, though they are uncircumcised, that righteousness might be imputed to them also. And the father of circumcision to those who not only are of the circumcision, but who also walk in the steps of the faith which our father Abraham had while he was still uncircumcised. Therefore, it is of faith that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only to those who are of the law, meaning of the circumcision, but also to those who are of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. And why do I bring Romans here? Because a lot of people will say, well, even Torah keepers, I've heard them like, you have to get circumcised after you come to this walk, like meaning the males, obviously. And understand something, the sign of the circumcision that Abraham did, that was broken on Sinai. That was broken by the people, which is why the temporal, the flesh, the law by the Levitical priesthood was established. The sign that we are to now have is a sign that is eternal, which is keeping his feast days, his moedims, his Sabbaths, right? However, I do want to say this. Righteousness does not come from a circumcised member. It comes from a circumcised heart, right? The outward representation of Abraham doing that was because his obedience came from his heart. He did as Abba commanded him. And so he outwardly manifested that obedience. That his heart was already circumcised. Now, taking it back to Genesis 1, 2, 3, 4. What was the sin that took place in Eden? That I believe was the sin of a sexual act, the forbidden fruit, right? Now, the seed that came from Adam is corrupt. it was used through that member, which happens to look like a snake. I'm sorry I'm talking in those terms, but understand that for him to become the father of many nations and bear through his seed, leading to Messiah, it had to be circumcised, the removal of the flesh.
Ooh,
Are you
that's
seeing the
good.
connection? The removal of the flesh. Why
Okay.
there? The removal of the flesh. So it's very spiritual. It's not the actual, because a lot of people think, oh, just because they're circumcised, they're part of the covenant. Listen, you can remove the flesh from that member all you want, but if your heart has that flesh in it, you could be circumcised. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna say it. My boys were I circumcised them when they were born just because of cleanliness, and I felt it's in scriptures, might as well do it. I didn't have any understanding of it, but I did it. Right? Does it mean that they were automatically entering in a covenant? No. Because we didn't, like that doesn't save anybody,
Yeah.
which is why, not Abraham, Paul here is talking about that the righteousness of the faith which he had while he was still uncircumcised, that he might be the father of all of those who believe, because it comes through faith, though they are uncircumcised. Get it? So it's
Yeah.
not a physical circumcision that's going to bring you into a covenant. But Abraham was obedient to death. So let's continue. Nehemiah 9:7. You are the Elohim who chose Abram and brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans and gave him the name Abraham. This is actually connecting with verse, sorry, 5, where he changes his name officially, right? Also connecting with verse 5, we have Romans 4:17. As it is written, I have made you the father of many nations in the presence of him whom he believed. Haya, who gives life to the dead and calls those things who do not exist as though they did. And then we have verse 6 where it says, I will make you exceedingly fruitful and I will make nations of you and kings shall come from you. We have Exodus 15:20. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And Genesis 17:16, I'm not going to read it. Genesis 35:11, not going to read it. That's the same promise. I do want to read Matthew 1:6, where it says, and Jesse begot David the king. David the king begot Solomon by her who had been the wife of Uriah. And I'm just confirming that through the seed of Abraham came many kings, including Mashiach himself. Exodus, um, actually no, verse 7. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant to be the most high to you and your descendants after you. Exodus 29:45, I will dwell among the children of Israel and will be their Elohim. Galatians 3:17, and this I say, that the law, which was 430 years later, cannot annul the covenant that was confirmed before by Elohim in Messiah, that it should make the promise of no effect. Again, if you guys have doubts, go back on YouTube. I have the entire study of Galatians that breaks it down. I tried to do my best to break it down verse by verse. Um, Genesis 26:24, and the Most High appeared to him by the same night and said, I am the Elohim of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. I will bless you and multiply your descendants. And again, he confirms this in Genesis 28:13. And again, Leviticus 11:45, for I am the Most High who brings you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. That is part of the covenant. That is the whole purpose. That is the whole deal. Um, where is Acts 7:5? Did I skip it or I didn't put it? Oh no, it's coming up. Okay. Leviticus 26:12-45. I will walk among you and be your Elohim, and you shall be my people. But for their sake, I will remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am the Adon. Hebrews 11:16. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. This is speaking to us, and it's the New Jerusalem. Romans 9:8. That is, those who are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of the Most High, but the children of the promise are counted as the seed. In other words, whoever comes through faith is a child counted of the seed of Abraham. Yes. Galatians 3:16, now to Abraham and his seed where the promise is made. He does not say and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to your seed who is Mashiach. Understanding that is through faith. It's not of the flesh, right? Genesis 12:7. And this is now connecting for verse 8. Also, I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be their Elohim. Connecting with that, we have Genesis 12:7 first. Then the Adon appeared to Abram, saying, and again, this is very redundant, so I'm just going to give them to you for your notes. Genesis 13:15 and 17. And again, confirmed by Stephen in Acts 7:5. And the Most High gave him no inheritance in it, not even enough to set his foot on. But even when Abraham had no child, he promised to give it to him for a possession and to his descendants after him. We also have confirming that Genesis 23:4. I am a foreigner and a visitor among you. Give me a property for my burial, for a burial place among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And this is later on. I think this is still Abraham, but in other words, he was considered a foreigner. Genesis 28:4, and give you the blessing of Abraham, to you and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the land in which you are a stranger, which Elohim gave to Abraham. Exodus 6:7, I will take you as my people and I will be your God. Then you shall know that I am the Adon, your Elohim, who brings you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. Exodus 29:45, I will dwell among the children of Israel and be their Elohim. Leviticus 26:12, I will walk among you and be your Elohim, and you shall be my people. You see the same covenant being repeated over and over and over throughout scriptures from beginning to end. Deuteronomy 29:13, that he may establish you today as a people for himself, and that he may be your Elohim to you, just as he has spoken to you, and just as he has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. And this is again the new generation being born within the wilderness. Revelation 21:7, he who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. Same exact promise from the beginning, full circle. Connecting with verse 9, and Haya said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant and your descendants after you throughout their generations. Exodus 19:5. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. This is right before the sin of the golden calf. This is right before when the people went into the covenant, ratified by blood, legally accepting the covenant, the terms of the covenant, and then later breaking it. So they entered the covenant that was given to Abraham, the same exact covenant. You see it now. Verse 9, literally connecting with all the way to Exodus 19:5. So it's the same exact covenant given to Abraham that they broke. Okay? John 7:22. This is now connecting with verse 10. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised. And we see that taking place. John 7:22, Moses therefore gave you circumcision, not that it is from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. So this is Messiah speaking to the Pharisees, by the way. Yeah. Acts 7:8, then he gave him the covenant of circumcision. And so Abraham begot Isaac and circumcised him on the 8th day. And Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot and the 12 patriarchs. And by the way, there's a connection there. Yes, that's exactly where I was going to go. You're following here. So there's a connection why they were to be circumcised on the 8th day. Again, going back to the removal of the flesh. In the physical, they were removing the flesh on the 8th day. We know that 8th day in the feasts represents eternity. We are to remove our flesh before we make it to eternity. There is a spiritual connection there, and it's beautiful. That's crazy. Yes. And it goes back to what I just read in Exodus 19:5, where it says, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people. Okay, remember 2 Peter 2:9 or 1 Peter 2:9, I forget if it's first or second, where it says, and you shall be a holy priesthood, a holy nation. It's the same exact thing. We are to remove our flesh. We are to die to ourselves in order to become his people, in order to enter into his eternal covenant. Exodus 12:13 and 48. Now the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, wait, let me see. This is connecting. This is actually connecting with verse 11. Hold on, let me read 11 first before I get ahead of myself. And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and that it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Okay, so now we see another sign here. Now the blood shall be a sign. This is speaking of the blood of the lamb on the doorpost for Passover. Where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. And when a stranger dwells with you and wants to keep the Passover to the Adon, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be as a native of the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat it. So why do I bring this up? I've heard a lot of people saying that if a male is uncircumcised, he cannot keep the Passover. However, I do believe, guys, I believe now we are in the spiritual aspect of this. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying don't get circumcised, because if you feel from the Most High to do it for the men that are connected, then you do it. Now, I do believe there's, like I said before, just because you are physically circumcised doesn't make you righteous. And just because, and I've even heard crazy things of people who actually check males before going in their synagogues to observe a Passover. Yes. Sounds very Pharisaic to me.
Yes.
And so, what I'm trying to say with this is that the physical mark that Abba's looking for is a circumcised heart. Like, you do nothing by the removal of your physical flesh if your mind and your heart is full of flesh. That's what I think, but anyhow.
And doesn't the word say he searches the mind and he searches the heart?
Yes.
So we wouldn't even be able to know a person.
Exactly. Just because you don't have flesh on your thingy
That's
majingy.
true.
And I think it's more like a spiritual thing. And I think the sign of the covenant initiated because of the sin that took place in Eden. There's a connection. There's a reason for that sign that was done to Abraham as the father of the nations, for his seed, to come through that physical sign. I don't know. I think it goes way deeper than any of our minds can even begin to comprehend right now. Romans 4:11 says, and he received the sign of the circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith, okay, which he had while still uncircumcised. Again, Paul, the man Paul, is on point here, that he might be the father of those who believe, though they are uncircumcised, that the righteousness might be imputed to them also. The righteousness comes through faith and comes through believing. And yes, when you believe, you do. What's inward is manifested outwardly, which is why I believe that if the Most High leads you to get circumcised and you obey and you do it, but don't go out there condemning people because they're not physically circumcised. I'm just saying, it goes deeper than an actual act of the flesh. Yes.
I was gonna say really quick that when you were talking, I was also thinking about how like the sign between us and him is really like the having the Torah between the front between our eyes and then the right hand.
And in the right hand, and it stems from our heart.
So I think
Absolutely.
if you think about it, the mind here is where you think, in between your mind is and you think, and your right hand is where your actions are at.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Agreed 100%. I forgot to open the chat earlier. Yes. So let's continue. Leviticus 12:3. And on the eighth day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. That's already given by in the commandments in Leviticus. But understand there's a connection with the eighth day and the removal of the flesh. Okay. On the eighth day, also, the priests were separated for him. Like literally the Levites on the eighth day, they had to come and consecrate themselves. There's so many connections with the eighth day. There's the connections of us being given a new name and a stone, right? So there's The feast of the
It's
eighth day
beautiful.
is beautiful. Okay, Exodus 4:24 to 26. And it came to pass on the way at the encampment that the Adon met with him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet, and said, "Surely you are a husband of blood to me." So he let him go. Then she said, "You are a husband of blood because of the circumcision." So we see here, and a lot of people will use this too, that when Moses was coming back, he had not circumcised his son that was born from not an Israelite woman, right? So he had not circumcised his son. And we see that the angel that was gonna kill him was gonna kill him because there was something that was out of covenant in his household. Understand that Moses, first and foremost, in chapter 4, not only was he being assigned to deliver his people out of captivity, but also this was before the sin of the golden calf. But even more so, the fact of what Moses represented, it needed to have an actual sign of the covenant, not only in him, but his sons.
Oh, just like Abraham.
Yes. And
Yeah.
also because his sons were literally gonna be, imagine, priesthood.
Oh, and they had to anoint the tabernacle, no?
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. Remember, Moses was a Levite. Well, a son of, yeah. Well, Levi meaning his, you guys understand what I'm saying. He was a son of, yeah, they're from the line of Levi. Judges 5:24, most blessed among women is, oh, wait, this is connecting. Sorry. Where was I? What was the
Um,
last one I did?
I think you were at
11,
chapter
12.
12, verse 12.
Okay, yeah. He who, no, I read Leviticus 12:3. Hold on. Leviticus 12:3. Yes, yes, I read that one. So what I'm reading now is verse 16. Sorry. Verse 16. And I will bless her and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her. So we see the blessing given to Sarah, and connecting with a blessing given to women. Let's go now to Judges 5:24. Most blessed among you is Jael, which was a woman, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Blessed is she among women in tents. Genesis 18:10. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. And behold, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Genesis 35:11. Also the Most High said to him, I am the God Almighty. Okay, that's the promise. Galatians 4:31. So then, brethren, we're not children of the bondwoman, but of the free, of the free woman. And he's speaking, by the way, Paul here is speaking to not bloodline Israelites.
Yeah.
He's speaking to the people of Galatia, which is another people of the nations, but that came through Messiah and are now part of the seed of Abraham because it's through faith. So they're part of the free woman, right? 1 Peter 3:6, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters you are, if you do good and are not afraid with any terror. So you see what Peter does there. In other words, if you do good, if you obey, if you are righteous, you are a daughter of Sarah. Yes, period, girl. Genesis 17:6. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. That's just confirming the promise. Genesis 36:31. Again, confirming the oh wait. No, these were the kings who reigned. Oh no, that's just confirming the kings will come from you. 1 Samuel 8:22. So the Adon said to Samuel, heed their voice and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, every man go to his city. That's just confirming the kings that came from her. That's the blessing that was given to Sarah. Um, I'm almost done with the connecting precepts, so we can sum it up. Verse 17, when then Abram fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old, and shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? So I want to read from Targum's Onkelo here, a different translation of the Targums, because it adds more understanding. A lot of people take that as Abraham doubted. But if you read from Onkelos Targum, it says, Abraham fell on his face and laughed, meaning he rejoiced. He said in his heart, can a 100-year-old man have children? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, give birth. So, in other words, if you read it carefully, it's not that he laughed because he doubted, but more so like, oh my God, like he rejoiced. Get it? Yeah. So connecting also with that, we have Romans 4, verse 20. He did not waver at the promise, which confirms that he didn't doubt. You see, he did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to the Most High. So he believed it. He wasn't laughing, mocking. He was laughing out of rejoicing. Genesis 17:3. Then Abraham fell on his face, and the Most High talked with him, saying, okay. Genesis 18:12. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also? So that's just meaning she also laughed. Genesis 21:6. And Sarah said, Haya has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. And I kind of see that as rejoicing.
The joy of
Yeah.
the dawn.
Verse So we see here Abraham imploring Ishmael might live before you. Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. And I think it's more him kind of like, oh, I just realized I took things in my own hands. And I just realized that Ishmael is not the son of the promise that I thought he would be. Can he still live? Like kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. He felt kind of convicted there, like, oh, wait, what do you mean? Oh, so Sarah's going to give me the son of the promise. It's not Ishmael. And so he kind of pleads there with him. But we see that, obviously, we see it in Genesis 18:23. Um, Look what Abraham says. And Abraham came near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wicked? That's just later on when Abraham is imploring
For the city of Sodom or Sodom.
Sodom and Gomorrah. I believe so. I think that's a chapter. Yes, yes. When he's imploring for Lot. Yes, yes. Absolutely, it is. It is. Sorry, I got like a little confused for a second. I'm like, wait, what? 19, where it says, no, Sarah, your wife, shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant. There's a few chapters, I'm not gonna read them, but just confirming Genesis 18:10, Genesis 21:2, Galatians 2:428. I'm going to read. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are children of promise. Again, Paul talking to people who were not bloodline Israelites here, right? Because we are of the faith. Genesis 22:16, confirming that. Matthew 1:2, Abraham begot Isaac, Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. And again, Messiah comes from that bloodline. Luke 3:35. In other words, if you accept Messiah, you go right back into that bloodline. Do you see why it's of the faith?
Yes.
Do you see, understand now? It's of the faith. It's not through blood. I mean, it's not through bloodline. Through the blood of Messiah, yes, but not through bloodline, which is spiritual. That's why we're to be born again.
By faith, not by sight.
Yes, yes. Luke 3:34. Again, confirming the son of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, the son of Terah, the son of Nahor. Verse 20. I'm not gonna, that's just confirming that he does make Ishmael fruitful. So I'm gonna skip that one because we know that already. I do want to just read verse 22 where it says, then he finished talking with him, and the Most High went up from Abraham. The Adon went up from Abraham. We know that this wasn't the father. No one has seen the father. Hold on. Not even Abraham. I believe that was we're gonna see that in the Targums, it actually says, wait, that's verse what? 22? In the Targums, it says, and he ceased speaking with him, and the glory of the Adon ascended from Abraham. But we know that his glory is the Son. And we know that, I believe that every encounter that these men had, like visual, physical encounters with the presence, even the pillar of fire by night and the pillar of cloud by day is Messiah. You know, the presence of the Father is manifested through the Son. Yes?
I was gonna say also how the word says the way to the Father is through the Son.
Through the
So like,
Son,
that's
yes.
how you first you encounter
No one
him.
comes to the Father except through the Son.
And
Absolutely.
then even in the book of Revelations, John saw the Messiah, eyes
Yes.
like fire and hair like wool.
Absolutely. So now I just want to go over some slides here to sum it all up. And again, it goes back to the covenant, right? And I will take you to be for me a people, and you will be to, and I will be your Elohim. It's from beginning to end. It does a full circle from Genesis all the way to Revelation. That's the covenant, right? So the key promises here are multiplication, nations and kings, everlasting covenant, and land inheritance. And we know that this land inheritance, it was way beyond Canaan. It's the new Jerusalem, right? Which I believe where Canaan was physically located is where Eden is located. I do wholeheartedly believe it. Again, Exodus 29:45, I will dwell among them. Revelation 21:7 is a covenant fulfillment. And again, even the tabernacle, even the Levitical priesthood, even all of that is a foreshadow because the tabernacle represented us, represented him tabernacling with us, meaning Messiah. Literally everything about it represents dwelling in their midst, right? Which is why they had to be holy, which is why they had to do all the animal sacrifices to attempt to cleanse themselves, right? Because he was in their midst. It's the same covenant theme throughout. So the covenant is not just land or lineage, it is relationship with the Most High, which is why he continuously says, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Okay? So we have the covenant progression theme. We have Abraham, Israel, Messiah, believers. Okay? It's literally through the seed of Abraham, but it's one seed. So Galatians 3:16, we see the promise fulfilled in Messiah. Romans 9:8, we are the children of promise. Look how Paul groups us, uh, uh, Gentiles, to call us that, right? Former Gentiles, because no longer are we Gentiles once we are grafted in, right? But he groups us as the children of promise through Abraham, but through Messiah, back to Abraham. The covenant expands not just physical descendants, but those who walk in faith and promise. Walk in faith and promise doesn't mean, oh, I believe and that's it. No, you're part of the covenant, right? Identity transformation. And I've always said it that until you don't understand this, you won't have a true identity in him. Until you don't understand that you are Israel, that you're literally part of his bloodline, that you go back into the tree of life. So from Abram, he is transformed to Abraham, right? We see the Most High changes names to declare destiny. Identity is spoken before manifestation, which is why in Revelation says that we are to be given a new name, interestingly, on the eighth day. Same name. No, that's why the babies were named on the eighth day as well. Messiah was given his name on the eighth day.
Cool.
Covenant sign. Circumcision equals the sign of the covenant. And again, we've read that in Romans 4:11 and Exodus 12:48, but it's an outward sign reflects an inward belonging. Obedience marks those that are set apart. So it's not so much a physical sign.
Yeah.
It's your obedience. It's spiritual. And again, Sarah blessed and chosen. We see promise includes nations. The promise meaning to her, it includes nations and includes kings coming from her womb, right? The insight of this blessing language over women is rare, but it's intentional. We saw the example with Jael in the book of Judges and in Luke. The Most High includes women fully in his covenant plan. Fully. And that's why I put a queen there with a beautiful crown. Abraham's laughter. Once again, Abraham laughs. This has two layers. On the surface, a lot of people think it's doubt. But when you dig deeper and we read from the Targums, we see that it's more like joy and awe, right? So, and we see that connection. We read it in Romans 4:20, which says that he believed it, right? He did not waver, right? So faith can look like wonder, amazement, and overwhelmed trust. Which a lot of times I've laughed to myself. Yes, go ahead.
Because I know one of the things of Targum,
Mm-hmm.
of how he laughed, like it meant like he rejoiced.
Yeah.
And that's what Isaac means. It means that he laughs.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a rejoicing thing, like his promised son that he had.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the blessing of the Most High brings no sorrow.
And yeah, absolutely. I
Yes.
believe it. And again, we see Ishmael and Isaac. So Ishmael is blessed and Isaac carries the covenant. The Most High is compassionate to all, but his covenant follows promise, not human striving. And that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. So seeing God, I want to take a little stoppage here. But once again, Exodus 23:21. If you read more in context, you see that it's talking about this angel that he sends to guide the people in the wilderness, right? And it tells and he tells Moses to tell the people for them to obey whatever this angel says to them, right? And then on verse 21 it says, "Pay attention to him and listen to his voice. Do not defy him, for he will not forgive rebellion, since my name is in him." And once again, I believe this was Messiah from beginning to end. Across scriptures, we see Hagar sees God, right? Jacob sees God. Moses cannot fully see him. Which is why I believe, once again, we're not talking about the same God. We're talking about where the Father and then there's the Son. The Son can be seen, but not the Father, which Messiah later confirms. And that's the Bible verse that I forgot to include, is where he says in scriptures, "No one has seen the Father but me." Okay? So the insight here is there's a distinction between the full essence of the Most High, unseen, and his revealed presence, seen or encountered. And once again, the full essence of the Most High is the Father. Is the Father, right? That's who he fully is. Now, the revealed presence, I believe he does it through the Son, which is why he says, "Because I have put my name in him." I don't know. I just think it's cool. This points to a consistent pattern. Again, the Most High makes himself known in ways humanity can encounter. And once again, how else would he do it if not through his son? The presence of the Most High. The Most High went up from Abraham. And in the Targum, we saw that it says that it describes his presence, the glory departing, right? The Most High is not confined physically. His presence is revealed and withdrawn intentionally. And again, when it talks about the presence, I just want to reiterate, I do believe that, yes, while sometimes it could be like you feel his presence, but I believe that when it's talking about the presence departed from them, there was a physical something there. Either an angel, Messiah, or like the pillar of clouds or the pillar of fire. There was something that was presently there that departs from them, right? So I do believe that because it was very visual in those days.
Yeah.
So promise over flesh, once again, Genesis, this is to sum it all up now. Genesis 16 through 17 presents two paths: flesh, striving, control, conflict, right? We said at the beginning, promise equals faith, covenant, and fulfillment. Yet the same God is present in both. The Elohim who sees, El Roy, the Almighty El Shaddai, the covenant keeping God. He meets the afflicted in the wilderness, the chosen in covenant. That should be a t-shirt. The Most High is not absent in our mistakes, but his promises are fulfilled. His ways, not ours. Okay? It's always in his way. And now finally, what the Most High has spoken, he will establish, not by human effort, but by his power, his presence, and his perfect timing.
Amazing.
Thank you for breaking bread with us. And I'm glad we were able to cover two chapters. I pray that this blessed you, and we will continue next week, like always. Study to show yourself approved. I do encourage you, continue reading, continue eating the bread of life. It truly will set you apart, especially in these times that we're living in. We need it more than ever. So, shalom. I'll see you next week.